What is a fossil? Before I tell you, I'll show you some. Down here, in the rocks of Thacher Park, we do have a few examples. These are brachiopods. Brachiopods are ancient shelled creatures that lived in a warm, shallow sea. When they died, they fell to the bottom and were deposited. Over time, they hardened into rock. So, what a fossil is, the remains of ancient life preserved in rock. Most people would walk on by this and not think anything of it. However, this is very significant. This is a piece of an ancient coral reef. What it does is indicate that this area was once under a shallow sea. It's also a good indicator of climate. Coral only grows in areas that are very warm and tropical, like areas near the equator. Therefore, it also indicates that this area of New York State was once warm and tropical. At Thacher Park, we introduced you to fossils. Here at the State Museum, they have a very large collection of fossils, and fossils that are very important in New York State history. I'm standing in front of a grouping of cephalopod fossils from 390 million years ago. That would be the Devonian period. To find this out, you'd of course go to your reference tables on page 8 and 9. Most of the rocks that we've seen here in New York State are from the Paleozoic era. The Paleozoic era is divided up into different periods of time: the Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous, and Permian. The Cambrian begins at 544 million years ago and goes all the way up to 490. And then we have the Ordovician, which goes to 443 million years ago, and all the way up to the Permian. The Permian ends at 251 million years ago. As you make your way across to page 9 of the reference tables, you see important geologic events in New York State. Down at the very bottom, something that happened in the Precambrian era, we have the Grenville orogeny. That's when we had the uplift of the ancestral Adirondack Mountains. As you go further up through the Paleozoic era, we have the Taconian orogeny, the Acadian orogeny, and the Appalachian orogeny. These orogenies are mountain building events. Next to the important geologic events in New York State, we have the inferred position of the Earth's land masses. Down at the very bottom, we see in the Ordovician time, 458 million years ago. In black, we see North America. And North America, as you can see, is below the equator. And as we move up to the Devonian and Mississippian times, 362 million years ago, you can see New York State is almost exactly on the equator, which would make for that climactic change that we've seen and talked about. Then as we move up in the Triassic time, we see North America has moved more northward, and further north in the Cretaceous, and then finally close to where it is today during the Tertiary time. Here we have a good example of the law of superposition. The law of superposition states that the oldest rocks are on the bottom, down here, and as you go up in an undisturbed rock sequence, the youngest rocks are up toward the top. As we get to the very top of this stack of rock stratum, that's where we would have our youngest rock layers. Now these rocks here beside me are mostly made out of shale and limestone. However, as you go back, you notice something's a little bit different with this bottom layer. This bottom layer is actually a different type of rock called dolostone. And dolostone tends to be less resistant to erosion than the rest of the rocks. So that gets eaten away a lot easier over time.
The composition, structure, position, and fossil content of the Earth's rocks provide information about the Earth's geologic history. Using the evidence from these rocks, scientists have been able to tell many things about our geologic past, such as climate change, positions of the continents on the Earth, and the approximate age of the Earth itself, 4.6 billion years.